bloody fantastic.
Hello everybody, my name is Goodboy and welcome to a video on the top 5 mistakes chess auto players ought to avoid. Dota Auto Chess is taking the Dota 2 community by storm. Currently we're seeing about 25% at peak times are playing Dota Auto Chess within the Dota game console, making it the most successful game mod ever produced by Dota. Will it have its own spin-off much in the same way that Dota was? We don't know. But I do know these are some of the 5 rules that are definitely worth keeping in mind and mistakes worth avoiding in order to get yourself a fantastic series of win streaks and higher ranks. So the first rule is the correct early hero selection, and in particular, putting out of your mind any one particular strategy you were thinking of and looking at what the game dishes you. Generally speaking, if you're going with a certain strategy, the chances are you're not actually going to get it. Reason being is there's a huge pool of heroes to select from, and based on simple rules of RNG, if you're going for a knight strategy, the chances are you won't see any knights for 5 turns, and so on and so forth. Heroes that generally tend to be highly frequent in the early game are Warrior class, Druid class, and Mech class. So those are the 3 probably most likely classes you'll see. The problem is all 3 of those, as you can probably understand, particularly the Druid class, are very, very highly sought after and will be likely picked by the enemy team. And then you have the part of the game is there's an exclusion variable, so the more and more you see of anti-mage, the less and less is likely to come out, and vice versa. So that's something you have to take into account. But in terms of your early strategy game, what you actually want to do is pick heroes where you're seeing multiple units of them. So for example, let's say you saw 2 Bat Riders. Drafting those and even locking your chess pieces so you get them, and then waiting for 2 more turns where the chances are a 3rd Bat Rider will come out, will then give you a level 3 as opposed to a level 1 hero, which gives you a much better chance in auto chess. Your objective in the early part of the game is to simply pick heroes that are you're going to have to group together to make higher levels, because let me assure you, 3 axes or axe-like warrior creatures usually aren't as good as one single grouped up axe in the early parts of the game. So don't have any particular strategy in mind. Simply draft heroes where you're seeing multiple numbers of them and then add them together, because by the time you get to your level 3, you want to make sure you've got at least one of your heroes as a 2-star hero instead of a 1-star, and that significantly helps improve your game. Whatever you do, don't go, oh yeah, but I'm going for this techie strategy or whatever, and then find that or this mech strategy or whatever, and then find that you don't actually get any of the heroes except for the one that you picked once. Where meanwhile you had 3 axes you could have picked and drafted together. So that's a pretty good rule to avoid in the early game right there. The next big important rule is actually leveling at the right time. When I say leveling at the right time, I'm not talking about the late game. I'm actually talking about the early game. Typically, when you're facing around about round 4, you can make the very, very awkward choice of deciding as to whether or not to pick some more heroes or level up with 5 gold to the next level. Generally, providing you have some heroes in the back, that's actually a better idea. And the same applies also for level 5 and getting to level 6. Typically, unless you have a desperate hero that synergizes perfectly with your game strategy, then actually you kind of want to level up faster than you actually want to get minions. So rushing to level 6, unless of course there's a critical hero to pick or you don't have enough heroes to put on the board, is actually much, much better than cycling through. And you should never, ever, ever cycle through your hero selection in the early game until you are level 6. Once you get to level 6, you get a much broader pool of heroes to draft from anyway. And if you get there first, chances are you'll get that one particular 4-cost creature that's actually, minion or hero that's going to give you exactly what your synergy you're looking for. So actually leveling in the early parts of the game, providing you've got obviously heroes to play on the board, and of course there isn't like a critical hero that makes you like a 3-stack or whatever, is actually a much more important idea. Leveling towards the late game, post level 6, is something I'll talk about later, but actually isn't as important as getting ahead. And remember, 4 heroes versus 5 heroes, which is very easy to do in the early parts of the game, is considerably better than simply having one hero in storage that you're not going to use, or a slightly better hero on the board versus one that you've had to replace it with. it is much better just to have 4 versus 5 or 4 versus 3. You know, getting that hero advantage gives you more wins. Remember, more wins means more golds, particularly with a winning streak. So the next important mistake people make is negative synergies. And the thing is, often it only actually requires 2 heroes to get a synergy going. And this is kind of a big deal. Now, you may have tried to go for mechs. Mechs are pretty good because it only requires 2 mechs and then you instantly get that regen. 4 mechs, you get a much more increased level of regen. Although you may not get your mechs. This is something you have to look out for in terms of your drafting. But remember, 2 heroes are all. Often it's just 2 different heroes that requires. Like knights, for example, they get that massive protective shield just for having 2 knights. So, for example, if you've drafted a Luna as part of an elf strategy, you can then also pick any other knight, Chaos Knight for all you care. It doesn't actually matter, even though it doesn't fit in the synergy of your deck. Putting that is a hero to put down in the early game, and then on top of that, it gives you that extra synergy. And so sometimes you need to draft appropriate heroes that synergize with what you're doing. And remember, it's that one other hero, that that one another synergy. Then that's basic synergies in the early game. But as you progress, what you actually want to do is have a big synergy for the later game. And probably one of the best examples of that is goblins, because if you get all 6 goblins, you get massive levels of regeneration. Now, like I say, that's actually quite hard to draft because there are only 6 goblins, and one of them is techies, and that requires massively high levels to get to. So that usually doesn't work. But for example, warriors are very, very easy to draft. There's plenty of warriors out there. It's usually easy to get 6 warriors, and they have massive armor buffs. The armor buffs are insane. The extra armor makes them almost unkillable. So that's one of the best easy synergies to do. So with your short-term synergies, you just simply need 1 different hero. So like with elves, it gives you evasions. With beast, it gives you the damage. Stuff like that will give you the synergy. Knights, it gives you the shields. That kind of thing. Basic synergies. Mechs, obviously the regen. But then, as you continue on, you actually want to think about your bigger picture synergy, where when you have 6 of different types of heroes of that one particular class, they then have massive levels of whatever benefit is, whether it's armor or evasion or whatever. So the next mistake people do is either not saving up or not saving up at the right time. This is pretty major as well. So saving at the right time is pretty important. What some people can do is they get to level 6 and then they decide, cool, well, I'm going to suffer a series of defeats, but I'm going to save up to that 50 gold. That's kind of a mistake, because even though you do get the losing streak, although sometimes you might win by accident, generally speaking, you get that extra bonus gold just for winning. And so you're always better off for winning instead of losing. And losing streak is just more compensation for screwing up, as opposed to actually being anything beneficial. The better thing always is to win. And having a winning streak is much more important than having a losing streak. And so in terms of saving up your gold, what you need to do is look at your competition and then look on the board to see if anybody is losing, if you're losing against any of the matchups you're having during your auto chess game. If you are, then actually what you're better to do is either level up your hero another level to put another hero down, or cycling through your different heroes to try and level up the heroes you got on the board to give you a better chance of winning. What you don't want to do generally is simply hard save, even though you're going to lose loads in the process of doing it. It's much better to simply save up in a slower pace and then get what you need. And also another good way to save up is to set yourself targets. So save up 10 gold or save up 20 gold and then spend it a bit, and then save yourself up 30 gold, then spend a bit, then 40 gold, then spend a bit. You don't have to simply hard save to 50 to get the maximum benefit, but doing that steadily, usually once you get to level 6, is going to help you do it really well. And don't make the mistake of trying to hard save up. Finally, the last mistake people make is bad positioning, and this is a super simple, easy thing to do, and actually it can really screw you over. So typically in Dota Auto Chess, there's roughly speaking 2 formations. There is a third formation that can work quite nicely, but generally there's 2 or 3 formations. The first one is the block. So this is where you put yourself in the bottom left of the map, and then you form a nice square block or rectangular block or whatever, but you're all clumped in nicely together. Now, this works very good against matchups where they have jumping heroes. So this is the assassin class of heroes. So this is bounty hunters or Templar assassins, or for example Phantom assassin, heroes, basically heroes like that. And what they do is they can jump behind you and then attack one or multiple heroes, and what they do is they distract your team from focusing on the other direction. This is a very, very effective diversionary tactic. So what happens is 2 or 3 of your heroes focus on the assassin behind them, and then that distracts them, and then suddenly you've got 3 heroes on one side, 4 facing the rest of their team. So it's effectively 4 versus 7, for example, or 4 versus 6 or 5 or whatever it is, unfair numbers. Then your team dies. When your heroes finally kill the assassin, they turn around and see half their team's been decimated, and then they get finished off as well. So forming a block stops assassins from jumping behind you, which is a very, very good diversionary tactic. And what you want to do is try your best to always, if you're seeing a lot of the assassins in the enemy teams, then that's what you want to do. You form a nice strong block. However, the weakness with the block is that it makes you super vulnerable to nukes. So these are heroes, and AoE nukes in particular. So Tide Hunter, Kunkka, Tech is a little bit, Gyrocopter, Lich to a certain extent, although Lich is pretty overpowered to be fair. Heroes, basically heroes like that, or splashing heroes like Dragon Knight when he's upgraded is insane. He'll just, So what happens is if you're in a nice little block, but then all of a sudden you're finding your entire block is then being nuked to death, particularly as the game progresses, then actually it's better to form a line formation, especially if they don't have assassins. And generally line is going to do better because it helps you to engage the enemy quicker without distraction. So providing there aren't assassins on the enemy team, then you can just form yourself a nice line formation. That works pretty nicely. The other big mistake that people tend to make is not putting the heroes in the right order. Usually, I don't tend to see this a lot, but sometimes I see it. You want your squishy ranged heroes towards the back, so Luna is always at the back. She does insane levels of DPS, and if you put her in the right position, she'll definitely give you a great yield. On the other hand, of course, heroes like Treant or any big tanky armoured hero wants to go towards the front. And so that way they take the bulk of the damage, but they don't die, and that's why you want to give them all the regeneration and armor items to those heroes that you win from killing the different creeps at the different rounds. And then by bulking them up, they take the damage, regen up, and then your ranged heroes can do maximum levels of damage. Typically I don't see that being a problem, but that can work quite nicely. Finally, last little strategy that can work, which is the spaced out strategy. This is where you place out all the various different minions, heroes spaced from each other, so you get one. So effectively, they could all walk in a straight line forward if they need to. This can work, and this allows you to get engaged with the enemy quite quickly. But typically, I tend to find you usually want that line to protect your weaker ranged heroes towards the back. But it can work in a warrior lineup really well. Everybody, thanks so much for watching. These are the top 5 mistakes you can make playing in Dota Auto Chess. Please give the video a like, subscribe, and share. Goodbye.